And welcome, everybody. You know what this is. And for those who don't know, this is TV Courtroom, hosted by yours truly, attorney Michael Cord, aka Michael X, aka the angriest black man in America. And if you're checking us out, you know we're broadcasting live a number of ways. There's Xfinity here in the greater Philadelphia area, channels 66 and 966. Also, there's FiOS, channels 29 and 30. In addition, on demand, phillycam.org/watch, and also by radio. You can hear us there at WPPM 106.5 FM. As you know, I normally do this introduction about the topics I'm going to handle. 99 times out of 100, it pertains to a legal issue, a political issue, a cultural issue. And we're going to do the same thing today, not necessarily legal, not necessarily political, but certainly cultural. As you know, or should know, it's the 50th anniversary of hip hop coming up on August 11, 2023. What does that mean? That means exactly 50 years ago to the very day, hip hop, as we know it, was founded. Now, I want to be clear. We're not saying that exactly on that date, August 11, 1973, nothing happened before musically. And then on that day at 12:01 a.m., all of a sudden we have hip hop. It was a gradual progression. But the reason why hip hop heads acknowledge that date, August 11, 1973, is because of somebody named Kool Herc and what he did with the microphone and two turntables and the breakbeat and all that kind of stuff. So we acknowledge the birth of hip hop on that date, August 11, 1973, which means August 11, 2023 will be 50 years. Now, many of you know me as an agitator, a rabble rouser, a progressive, a revolutionary, a lawyer, a professor, adjunct professor. You know all that stuff. But many of you don't know the real me. All those things that I do because it's part of my quote unquote profession. But for me, if there were no injustice, if there were no racism, if there were no police brutality, if this society was perfect, I'd live, eat, sleep hip hop 24/7, 365. Why? Because, and this is going to be quick because we got two great guests. I want to get to them. But it's really interesting for me. I was introduced into hip hop before there was any thought about hip hop, before even 1973. I went to a great school, Masterman. I love to read. I love to write. I love literature. I love poetry. And as a Black person, of course, I love music. So you put that whole notion of music and then the spoken word. I'll never forget the first time I saw and heard Run DMC. I'm like, these artists are talking rhythmically with a beat. And then I'll never forget, I read a newspaper article which talked about this new group coming out, and they were described as the Black Panthers of rap. I'm like, the Black Panthers of rap, who could that be? That's when I was first introduced to Public Enemy. And the rest, as they say, is history. Now, there's so much I want to share with you about what's really hip hop. In fact, I don't even use the term real hip hop. I use the term unadulterated hip hop. And by that, I mean going back to 1973 and looking at what these brothers and sisters came up with in the Bronx. And it was pretty much a rhythmic soundtrack to their life of socioeconomic despair. And they began to talk about stuff in connection with that. And then it blew up. And as Chuck D said from Public Enemy, who stole the soul? Corporate America stole the soul. But believe it or not, we still got some artists that are true to hip hop, that are purists. We have today a brother by the name of Oheni, and I had to go back before the show to figure out how long has it been since I first met him. And I went back to I got, of course, a Gmail email address like pretty much everybody else. So I went back to my old MSN email to see when was my first email communication with Oheni, because that could give me some idea as to when I met him for the first time. And I traveled back in time to about, it had to be maybe 2003, 2004, which means I've been knowing Oheni for about 20 years. Now he looks like he's about 19 years old, but he's a brother who's been doing this thing and is arguably one of the best, if not the best, hip hop related artist ever. Because, and by the way, he has his own Wikipedia page. How many hip hop artists you know that has their own hip hop page, has a home Wikipedia page regarding hip hop? Let me just say this: Wikipedia usually is superficial, really doesn't get it right, but they get it right when they talk about him as a rapper, an MC, a vocalist, a keyboard artist, a bass player, a guitar player, a drum player, a percussionist. Pretty much, I guess the best way you can describe Oheni is, imagine Stevie Wonder and his genius, imagine Andre 3000 and his genius, and imagine them together writing hieroglyphics and then lyrics to that with the beat from the djembe in West Africa. Put all that together, you got Oheni. And in addition to Oheni today, I love to think that I'm the hip hop professor, but I know my limits. I know what I know about hip hop, but there's a gentleman that we call the rapping professor. Some people know him as Dr. Aaron Smith. Other people know him as Dr. Jabali Ade, but we all know and love him as the real #1 hip hop professor, rapping professor. He's a walking encyclopedia. I interviewed him, well, he interviewed me a couple days ago on his show about a legal issue. And as you see over my left shoulder, there's an image of Malcolm X. Anytime I talk about legal issues, I do what Brother Malcolm said. I break it down and make it plain. So as I was making it plain on Dr. Jabali Ade's show, he gave it back to me with hip hop related analogies. I mean, just a deep, deep brother. So let's do this. We're going to bring both of them up on the screen together, and I'm going to ask a few questions to each of them. And then I'm just going to let each of them separately go for 10, 15, 20 minutes because they have so much to say. So without further ado, my good friend, Oheni. In addition, my good friend, Dr. Jabali Ade, also known as Dr. Aaron Smith. And by the way, if I didn't say it about brother Dr. Aaron Smith, who, if we don't have him yet, we certainly will. He's a professor, an award-winning professor at Temple University in the Africology department. He's written or edited several books and scholarly articles. He has 3 master's degrees, has a PhD, and just a deep intellectual brother. So we're going to get to him shortly. Let's start with Oheni. Oheni, like I said, man, you look like you're 19 years old, so you must be eating right and living right and no stress. But man, for the next 10, 12, 15 minutes, I'm going to turn it over to you. And what I said I wanted to do is I want you to do a couple things. One, I want you to talk about what the 50th anniversary of hip hop means to you. Okay. Number 2, I want you to be as candid and honest as you always are. What do you see as great about the state of hip hop? And what do you see as horrible about the state of hip hop? So for the next 10, 12, 15 minutes, it's the Oheni Show. By the way, I want people to understand that you've been doing this, as far as I know, since about 1997. I believe you did Rapidemics back in 2004. So fast forward from 2004, we're almost in 2024. And if I don't know for sure, but it seems to me you're making beats and tracks every single day. So you probably, 2004, you probably have something as recently as August 4, 2023. Finally, let me say this, man, then I'm gonna turn it over to you. No questions, comments from me. I just want you to run with it. I have described you on social media as a Martian. I've described you as an extraterrestrial because I know hip hop in terms of flow and delivery and cadence and breath control and assonance and simile and metaphor, and that's all great. But you take it to another level. So turn it over to you. 1, what does the 50th anniversary mean to you? 2, what do you see as the state of hip hop? And 3, people need to know who you are and what you do and why you do it. Without further ado, the Brother Oheni Show.
Oh, thank you, Mike. First of all, it's an honor to be here. You know, I consider myself a student of you as well. I came to your class before I taught my class at Temple University, the pass up thing that they had. And I was really blown away by the historic knowledge that you presented. At the time, I was teaching a course on the art of rap in
Yes.
like a small
Yes.
church, in the basement of a small church. And so one of the ladies there came to pick up her daughter, and she said, "I don't know if you know, but there's a hip hop class, and they're teaching this at Temple." So I said, "What? Wait, what?" So, so I immediately started, like, just I need to know, like, where do I need to go? And she gave me, the flyer, and I was out there. Like the very next thing, next day that you had the class, and I was blown away by your passion and love, and also knowledge. And I was like, sometimes the MCs, we feel like we really know the culture because we
Yes.
study the rappers and watch all the interviews, but there was a lot to learn, and it was a very beautiful experience in time that I always hold dear. So I just wanted to say that really quickly. Um, the 50th and and the other thing about me looking like I'm 19, everybody keeps saying this, and you're making it very hard for me. Y'all making me the hip hop baby face. So now I'm gonna have to figure out a way to never age because everyone keeps saying that. Yeah, I started really young. I mean, as far as the hip hop anniversary, this is the thing I wanted to say about the anniversary of hip hop, the 50th anniversary. I think about hip hop as such a miracle. The power of words and the ability to just bring something out of nothing, like
Yes.
the ability to say, you know what, we're not working with instruments, but that's okay. We have some turntables here. What can we do with this? That abundance mentality that a lot of times you find our people we have. As you know, I grew up in Ghana as well as in Philadelphia. So I see especially what we've come from. We come from an abundance mindset. This is why whenever we're having a group and there's dancing going on, we invite everyone. We're like, come on in. And so that abundance mentality is what makes it where scarcity is never a thing. Even
Mm.
though there was scarcity there, these guys said, man, what can we do? Maybe we don't have the ability to take singing lessons, but maybe we can rhyme some words. Maybe we can do this. Maybe we can take these turntables and turn them into an instrument. And the interesting thing is when we think of instruments, my uncle who raised me in Ghana was a classical pianist. And we've always had a back and forth because, being into that style of music, Western classical music, um, he didn't really understand or respect hip hop. And so I used to
Yes.
always have these back and forths with him. He was like
And
the
let me
dark.
ask you this, Henny, could
Yeah.
you appreciate why he didn't respect it?
I understood his perspective. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think it's a lack of understanding of
Yes.
the genius that hip hop is. And I also think that it's somewhat cultural imperialism. I mean, if we're being 100% honest, because when even the idea of an instrument, right? An instrument is what you say an instrument is. If I start banging on some pots and pans and I'm really bringing that heat, that's an instrument. So the idea that a harpsichord is more of an instrument than a turntable is really a form of cultural imperialism. So these are the type of debates that I would have. James Mtume was a mentor of mine, and he really helped to
Hmm.
bring me into the mentality of his mentor, Miles Davis, which is, listen, bebop and quote unquote jazz is as sophisticated as Western classical music. And rap can be as well. Rap was an infant 50 years ago. So people who judged it prematurely didn't see where it was actually going. Of course, it
And let
goes
me
back.
let me ask you this, Henny, you're probably going to get into this, but talk about what I like. I guess the best way I can frame this: what separates the men from the boys, because there's a lot of trash rap out there, and you understand why people say that's garbage. Absolutely, that sounds like as I always say, my 7, 8, and 9-year-old godsons sound just like platinum selling artists today. So I can why people who don't know hip hop think that it doesn't require skills. Talk to us about the skills for a true lyricist, for a true artist.
Okay, so as you know, Mike, I have this book, and it's just a shameless plug. It's a very
Well, no,
simple book,
hold it up.
but
Hold it up.
it's called, I was going to get into it. It's called Becoming an MC. And I spelled the EMSEE with the eyes like C, the visuals. So it's called Becoming an MC. And in this book, I get into just some basic principles: rhymes, composition, wit, voicing, word manipulation, flow, live performance. And I just want to say this: everyone can rap, just like everyone can sing, right? But the difference between a person singing in the shower and someone like Anita Baker or Jasmine Sullivan are two different things. Ella Fitzgerald was a master of the craft. And so when, again, everyone can rap, everyone can voice, rhymes. But to be a master of the craft requires discipline. You have to actually care about the craft. You have to study it. You have to know about the difference between multi-syllable rhymes and basic, one-syllable rhymes. The difference between metaphors, similes. You know about voicing. Now I'm beginning to teach the different voicings of rap. For example, you have the scream voice, which you might hear me doing on a lot of the newer records, where I'm more aggressive, more loud, and there's more growl to my voice. And then you have your more chest voice, your confident voice. These are things that the people who are very serious with the craft of rapping do.
Yes.
I will say this: as much as we know that there are a lot of people who are taking advantage of rap to maybe get to some money or whatever, we know that the gift of being a true lyricist, being a true MC, someone who cares about the craft, is longevity. The reason that I literally am going viral as we speak, and I've gotten like 20,000 followers in one day.
Including some big name followers.
Yeah, oh, of course, it's because of the quality of the work. So, it's like the quality is what insulates you from time. Somebody like, a Chip Fu or Pharoah Monch or KRS-One, these are timeless artists that they'll be around forever because they studied the craft. And it's just like any other great musician or any other discipline. If you're a great plumber, people will hire you. They'll always want to bring you back, So I think that it's valuable, to respect the craft. Again, I see a lot of stuff going on, man, and some of that is really not the fault of the community, because the community I know, when you go to the club and it's not fire, then they might beat you up. Like, it might actually get real ignorant. So I just know it to be, we're seeing a lot of stuff that's not really coming out the community,
Okay. I'm glad you explained it that way, because you're much more patient than I am.
Maybe diplomatic, Mike. Maybe a little more diplomatic.
Exactly. I talked to some kids, and I mean 17, 18, 19 years old, a couple years ago. And I was honest with them. I said, look, the difference between your generation and mine is that we clowned our trash rappers. We clowned Ice and MC Hammer. I said, but you praised us. I said, the worst of yours, you hold up. We still hold up Rakim and KRS and all that kind of stuff. I said, couple things. One, which of your platinum selling artists today, that was 2021, will be around 5 years from now, will be around 10 years from now? Then I asked him honestly, I said, for everything you do, there's rules. If you're playing basketball, there's rules to dribbling and passing. If you're playing football, there's rules to running and tackling. In hip hop, there's got to be rules about flow and cadence and delivery. There's got to be some structure. I said, what the hell are y'all listening to? Like, what is that? And they were honest with me. They said, look, old head, it's no longer about lyricism. It's about beats. If the track is hot, then that's what we want. I said, well, call it dance music then. Don't call it hip hop, the thing I love. I even told him the story about MC Hammer. I said, this thing I loved about MC Hammer is he stopped calling himself MC. He basically said, not an MC. I respect the craft too much to continue to call myself MC Hammer. Call me Hammer, by the way. And that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
That's it. So what I want to do, Henny, I'd like you to make a few more statements, 2 or 3 more minutes. And I want to bring up the rapping professor.
I'm paying for it. I want to hear
Professor Dr. Aaron Smith, aka Jabali Ade, and I want to hear from him for a couple minutes. Then I want to give it back to you, Ohendi, because I want you to talk more about you as an artist and how do you explain your longevity? How do you explain big name folks in the industry reaching out to you? And at the end of all that, Ohendi, I want to do some hate. If you would join me in calling out some trash rappers, that would be fine with me. If you don't, I'd be happy to take it with me. Like, for example, I'm not going to go there with Lil Nas X and what he is as a person, but you can't call yourself Nas. You just can't do that. I don't care whether you're gay or straight, transgender, you can't call yourself Nas. Out of respect to the culture, come up with another name and do your thing. And I might buy your albums. Anyway, without further ado, we introduced earlier our second panelist for today's show. And by the way, we're talking about the upcoming 50th anniversary of the birth of hip hop back on August 11, 1973. And I pointed out that I teach and taught a hip hop 101 course, but I know my limits. They say that game recognized game. So anytime I'm around the rapping professor, I kind of back up a little bit. You know, I'll throw my 2 cents in, but I won't lead the conversation. If I'm not the smartest guy in the room, I'll shut up. So when it comes to hip hop, the fact that we call him the rapping professor is no hyperbole. He can rhyme and he also knows the history. So before we come back to Ohendi, and we want to give Ohendi at least 12 to 15 more minutes, I want to go to the rapping professor, aka Dr. Aaron Smith, aka Dr. Jabali Ade, and have you talk a little bit about what the 50th anniversary of hip hop means to you, and what do you see as the state of hip hop today? In other words, are you optimistic or pessimistic? Without further ado, for the next 2, 3, 4 minutes, the rapping professor, then we'll come back to Ohendi.
Well, let me start by saying this is my first time hearing from the brother, and I just would love to have the opportunity just to sit and just talk hip hop with the brother, because that's yes. Some of the best conversation in a long time. I'm this is my first time, brother, but I just want to give you flowers and say whatever we could do to work or whatever like that. I'm nodding the whole time you're talking.
I agree. I want to definitely. I'm open.
But let me talk a little bit of hip hop real quick, because first of all, I don't want you to forget in terms of the Lil Nas X comment, not just the Nas part, but the X part too.
Ooh.
Like, he that one. He said, I'm gonna use a little bit of DMX and Nas, and he shouldn't have had it. So like,
I missed that. I missed that.
Yeah, okay. He said that X, you know, and do it on top of that. You know, he said, while I'm at it, you know, since I'm being sacrilegious, I might as well just, you know, go all out. I put on this hat today because I thought to myself, I wanted to channel the energy and the spirit of the good brother John Ecstasy Fletcher, right? And I wanted to make sure I mentioned, you know, of Houdini. And I've argued with people often because I've said, why don't people include Escape as a classic album in these discussions? Ooh. They talk about Illmatic with 10 tracks, right? Escape had 8 tracks. We're talking about 5 minutes of funk. We're talking about Friends. We're talking about Big Mouth, right? We're talking about The Freaks Come Out at Night. Disco till after dark, and it ain't till 12 till the party really starts. Like I always wonder, like, what happened where they can give Rakim what he deserves, even though he had instrumentals and 1-verse songs and everything else. And I'm a big Rakim fan, but if the criteria is such that we're looking at impact and timing and all that, and how he shifted the paradigm, then you gotta say, come on now. I mean, he came up on stage with the leather jacket, no shirt, with the little white shorts and the white boots, man. Like he was bridging the whole cameo and the Funkadelic and you know, and the Zulu Nation with what was to come in terms of the lyricism and the performance. Houdini don't get their credit. So I just threw the hat on to make sure I can make that point just to get started. Lastly, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't introduce myself the proper way, since I'm currently in North Philly. I always use the inspiration from the great Meek Mill. Let me say something controversial. I always argue it's the best introduction of any rap album in the history of the genre, not up for debate. You give me your best song that comes in the beginning of any album, and I'll play Dreams and Nightmares, and we'll just let the crowd decide. That's going to I'll just stop right there. But I like to say, I used to pray to speak like this to peeps like this, Coretta and Martin, queens and kings like this, in the back of a paddy wagon, cuffs was on my wrist, thinking, man, our ancestors had it worse than this. Now, when y'all dreams take hold, nightmares are through. It's time to marry our destiny. Let's say I do. Far as freedom, you gotta see it with a clear-eye view, so the ancestors can bless you. Like you said, I chew, but you gotta read. Let that breathe. Before they come for me, I'm getting deep. Never let no fear get in between intended targets. Literally finish what you started. They love you, deaf, dumb, and blind, but they hate it when you get smarter. I went and got it regardless. Vision it like an artist. When the struggle gets harder, remember, you the hardest. Be a god or a goddess for people over your prophets. Pay no mind to them cowards. I tell my haters, I got this. See, I know that my mind is power, and I'm speaking to take us higher. Here at Temple, we bring that fire, so I keep it real so the chosen can be inspired. When you got your mind right, then the hate increase. They blaming it on sagging pants and copping beats. So I murder beats from the streets to the barbershop. Fans be like, oh, hey, your bars are hot. You gotta pop. If you ain't talking about uplifting, what you talking about? See, real gangsters move in silence. You see, they talk a lot. I'ma use my words, and I'ma use the word on my grind until we get what we deserve. Now get up. Hold up, wait a minute. They thought we was finished. Took away the money for our schools to build their prisons. Lecturing on my haters just like Papa with his Spanish double in ya. I'm a G. I make a movement, making millions. Type to come with them Garvey and them Dakasanti quotes. Melissa Harris Perry, some Ta-Nehisi Coates, some Mark Lamont Hill for y'all young minds to glow. If some names they ain't recognize when they Google that when you go, because this more than about bill money or just keeping it real. Those who brought this truth before me been killed. They caught around and put them down. They in the ground, no joke. I come to make this clear for y'all. No mirrors and no smoke. Yo, all I know is learning. When it comes to me, I got books on Afrocentrics. I got books on Dr. King. I got my BA3 MAs, about to have 2 PhDs, and every time I give a lecture, I'll be turning up the heat bars. Okay, now I'm ready.
Let me just say this, man. I am blown away, man. But I really shouldn't be, because I expect that from you. You know, you. Before we turn it over to Ohene, and Ohene, a scholar and an entertainer, I'm not even going to ask Ohene any questions. I'm just going to turn the mic over to him. And for the next 7 to 10 minutes, it's going to be his thing. But before we get to him, Dr. Smith, aka Dr. Jabali Ade, how is it that somebody like you, with 3 master's degrees, 1 PhD, about to get a 2nd PhD, are so immersed in this quote unquote grimy culture, subculture of hip hop? How do you explain that?
Well, first, because I'm a Black man and my trajectory mirrors that of hip hop, where they counted all of us out. They left all of us for dead and said if we didn't assimilate and join the establishment the way that they did, that we wouldn't prosper or we wouldn't have any upward mobility. And just like that, I always talk about Wild Style and Beat Street, right? The themes like that Nas used to get in Illmatic. You should earn the medal for this. You be a man, get a job, right? This whole theory that, you know, if we're expressing ourselves artistically, that it can't be lucrative and it's not professional. We won't have a future. And just like people said, I mean, KRS One, you know, people still taking rapping for a joke, right? So they slept on all of us, whether it's hip hop or Black people. You know, they doubted us. They tried to relegate us to ghettos and poverty, and we changed the world. We waged that actual artistic revolution that was not televised until it was too late. And that was a multi-billion-dollar industry. And I'm just one of the fruits of those roots, you know, that believed in us when the world didn't. And that's why we the ones, you know, that the world is watching now.
Very well said. So I'm going to turn it over to Ohene. He's going to do his thing to enlighten us about, again, the question for those who just tuned in. What do you think and how does it pertain to you in terms of the 50th anniversary of hip hop? And what's the state of hip hop? Ohene, you know more about hip hop than I do because you live it. I just kind of visit every now and then, but you live it. Ohene, you want to address those 2 questions or anything else you think is relevant for the next 7 to 10 minutes?
Okay. Well, first of all, let me just acknowledge those bars, my man. You brought the fire. You know what I'm saying? I had told Mike asked me to do something. I am so tired. I was up overnight, basically. I've been editing video for this piece that I just came with. And so I'm literally, you know, just trying to keep it together, but that woke me up.
And hey, before you go there, Henny, tell folks how they can check your stuff out, where you are, and they can see and hear and feel the fire, and then finish your point.
Hey, listen, I'm at Ohene Savant everywhere. It's O-H as in Henry, E-N-E-S-A-V-A-N-T. Ohene Savant. And in Ghana, we say Ohene. So if you're from Ghana and you hear me, you know that's how we say it. So let me just say this about the conversations you had with the youth that you spoke to, Mike. What I tend to do when I have conversations, and I've been mentored younger people really since I was a kid. I've been, you know, a leader to people around me. One of the things I tend to do to win people over is to really paint a picture of how we got to this place. You know, a lot of times when the youth hear the complaints coming from the generations that are above them age-wise, they tend to think that, well, you guys, y'all just, y'all are attacking our music. You know what I'm saying? And really what I need to explain to them is it's not really your music. Your music would not sound like this. You are not, I don't want the youth to be insulted and think that they are not diverse. You can look amongst the youth and you'll see diversity. You'll see people who are street, people who are, conscious, people who are maybe political, people who may be like just funny. Like you have a variety in every group. So when, I tend to have these conversations and say that is not your music, that's the corporation's music. You didn't really have much of a choice in how this played out because a lot of our community, we're not actually behind the scenes making the decisions like we used to. That's the thing I first I explain it to them, and I start by showing them. We could just go on Google and look up the people that's running everything. It's not our music. Woo. So once you understand that, then we can then build from, okay, now once you understand that, what should it look like? It should look like you. You guys are not all dumb. Y'all are not all criminals. Y'all are not all, hoes. Y'all not all, y'all not, some of you are. Like some of you are, you know what I'm saying? Okay. But some of you are on your way to college. Some of you are on your way to, to being politicians or whatever. Like, so this lack of diversity is not reflective of the community. The community is not this monolithic and, and simplistic. So, I communicate that first as far as, I just wanted to say that to say, when people argue that, it's as if they think they have a choice. Once you understand that media is monopolized in such a way where we really don't have a choice. I mean, it's very simple. You can go turn a radio on and you're going to hear the same group of people over and over. That's not choice. That's not choice. So once you understand that, you don't really have a choice, then the next question is, well, where do you have a choice? And that's where I come in. My entire movement was built online. And I keep seeing people in my comment section constantly saying, why is this not on the radio? And I'm like, listen, like, let's let that go. Like, it's here. This is the new radio. Just let that go and let's do it. Let's enjoy it here. Hip hop found its way. If it wasn't going to be accepted in the mainstream, if we're talking about the 50th anniversary, right? It found its own way. It found its own clubs and it got it popping over there. You know what I'm saying? So my whole thing is, let's get it popping where we at and let's not even worry about who accepts it and who doesn't accept it. And when they come over here with that madness, then we just tell them, yo, this is not the spot for all of that. You know what I mean? Like, and so that's what I tend to do. I'm really building this movement. The song I put out today is actually called Cult Following, because I genuinely believe that the way I was able to create this movement was by going within. I have a saying, if you go within, you will never go without. So instead of chasing what's going on in the mainstream, I didn't chase it. I just really locked into, this is what I want to do. And what I see out there, I don't like it. Even when I taught my rap class, the reason I was teaching it was because people kept complaining about the state of hip hop and the fact that rap was getting whacked. So I was like, okay, if they're getting whacked, then what we going to do about it? We got to start teaching. So my entire movement has been to be proactive with creating the alternative to the things that I don't see or that I want to see. So a friend of mine, Dr. Scott Brown from UCLA, he says, his mentor taught him, listen, if you want to replace something, you have to replace it with something of equal or greater value. And so my whole thing is, when I see the state of hip hop and it's making me upset, then okay, what am I creating? You know what I'm saying? So that's what I do. I have 27 albums, because I'm supplying the people constantly. It's like, look, man, like, don't be upset. Just let's focus over here and let's build this to where we needed to be. And the beauty of the 50th anniversary of hip hop is that a lot of the pioneers are now getting a second bite at the apple. The corporations are kind of swinging around because a lot of the people who are now running those corporations are hip hop heads. They grew up on hip hop. So this is why there's like this revival you're seeing. And I know this because I'm friends with some of the pioneers. Kid and Play from Kid and Play is like my big brother. And so we talk about this all the time. And I explained to him, Professor Griff, we had a conversation. I said, listen, the guys who grew up on y'all are starting to take power. And that's why you watch commercials and it's a hip hop song. It's Black Sheep. Now you can get with this or you can get with that. That's happening. You're watching movies and you're seeing. So what we got to do is really capitalize off of this moment. And really, we also got to stop with the selling out, man. I really have to say that because when you sell the culture, as many of us have done the first time, as you know, Mike, when I first started my first label, there was no real support. I was drowned out by a lot of the craziness that was being promoted, the gun talk. I'm a clap you, shoot you in your head and your chest and blah, blah, blah. And all of that. That reckless stuff was just dominating the culture to the point where they were looking at me like I'm odd. Till this day, it still seems like I'm odd because I don't encourage Black people to kill each other. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just that in and of itself is revolutionary. And that it's a sad state, but I do think that we're making some progress. And the more that we take the reins of power from a corporate standpoint, the more our influence is being felt. Brothers like yourself, you came up hip hop and you're, a lawyer and an activist and you have a show, on cable and all. So this is the type of reality that we need to see. You have a professor who's over here spitting bars. Like this type of thing is how we end up, getting things back on track. And I'm just going to be here to supply the musical soundtrack. I spoke to a scientist yesterday and he also is in the hip hop and raps. And I'm like, we really are making progress. You know what I'm saying? Like we really are making some serious progress.
I got to tell you, Andy, I don't know if you wanted or intended to be my emotional support today, but you were with that last comment. Because when I listen to the shit on radio and TV, I'm demoralized. Like we're losing. I go out in public and say we're winning, but I'm like, damn, they like crushing us with this garbage. It's like the cheer you are. And even though we're allowed to say certain profanity on the show, when I first heard the woman who was talking about the color of her booty and all that kind of stuff and her a-hole and all that, do you know, I thought that was a joke. I didn't know that was real, that they have that song out there like that. So that's by the way, those who are tuning in, you're listening to the profound voices of, I call him a Martian, an extraterrestrial. He's an all-star in terms of a do-everything guy, rapper, an MC, record producer, vocalist, keyboardist, bass guitar, lead guitar, drums, anything you can think of in terms of musical entertainment and production of that and engineering regarding that. O'Henny is the man. It's not just me saying it. Professor Griff and Kid and Play and Sway and Pete Rock and so many other in the industry. Listening to him along with Dr. Aaron Smith, aka Dr. Jabali Ade, aka the rapping professor. So let's do this, folks. We're going to shift back to Dr. Ade for another 3, 4, 5 minutes, and then we're going to come back to Brother O'Henny and give them both a 2-3 minute closing statement. So, Dr. Ade, what do you want to add to what you heard O'Henny say, or what do you want to add to the points you made early on? And I hope we didn't lose either one. Okay, we still got him. We got him.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of the 50 years, I do think that it's a shift, a zeitgeist paradigm shift, a new chapter, a new time, especially with the situation with COVID. Like something happened in the world. The world is not the same as it was, prior to the pandemic. And that creates opportunities, new challenges, there's new ways that we need to figure out how to adapt and adjust. But it also creates new opportunities, for new ways of communicating and new ways of art and new ways of being. And I do agree that I'm so pleased to see a lot of the pioneers live, to really not just get their flowers, but like Dr. King
Mm.
for that march for, for jobs and freedom to get their check, right? When we go to Washington, we're going to get our check.
Yes, yes,
So I like that Jay-Z don't got to overcharge them for what they did to the Cold Crush, because a lot of members
yes.
can actually go abroad and at home and still make sure that they get paid. And I'm always pleased to see people like Rakim and the Sprite ads and all that, because it's long overdue, right? That they've received their just due. The other thing is, I think a lot of it does deal with perception, because if we look at it through the lens of radio, yes, I agree with you, Attorney Cord, that we're going to feel a certain way. But like my brother was saying, if you focus on what we're doing and the opportunities we have, and this amazing revolution like cryptocurrency, that it's been decentralized, right? I remember that. Please listen to my demo, right? I remember watching set it off and Queen Latifah throwing CDs out of the window and thinking back to when she was, the gatekeeper in Juice, calling Q local and saying that his rhymes is mixed, mixed with trash, right?
Yes.
There was a time you had to wait in line, and if one person didn't like you, then you didn't even get the opportunity for the crowd to hear you, right? So the fact that now you can, at the click of a button, be heard around the world, right? If you don't like me here, I might be popping in Germany, and that's all I need. And once I know I'm popping in Germany, guess where I'm headed? Germany. And guess where I might end up living if I end up, blowing up over there? I remember Swiss Beats said something similar when at the time, Mashonda, right? The little sister he was with, and she put out an album. And the people locally were saying, oh, well, how do you feel about, how our album did? And Swiss was like, we did our numbers. Because they were thinking locally, right? The person down the block don't like her album. And he had to, Swiss Beats was he's always trying to educate people, politely, right? And he was trying to even let the people on the radio station know, like, this is a big world. Just because somebody in this region don't like you, there's a whole bunch of and she basically let us know, broke it down, like, if they don't like you here, and I think Naughty by Nature was saying something similar, and Tretch was like, yo, we're on tour all year. Like, we travel the world every year, all year. Like, don't get it twisted. And I'm hoping that one thing we could do away with this new era is this whole notion of irrelevant. I'm hoping that we can leave that behind, like the same way we left the mask behind, the same way, like that, because that was one of the most dangerous and toxic notions. And I don't want to name no names, but shouts out to Dipset. But I do remember when Jim Jones was going to Jay-Z with the Chocolatas, and then that's when Game said, you 38 and you still rapping, and now he's about 38, right? But I remember thinking, this isn't going to age well, and it's extremely problematic. And I remember a lot of pioneers saying things like, y'all don't do this to the Rolling Stones. Like, y'all don't do this to the Grateful Dead. Like, like it's not productive, because you're going to be one of these artists one day. And they didn't see that it wasn't a sustainable model. They were so caught up in the beef of it all. I'm hoping that now that a lot of those artists are older, right? You see people like they used to diss people working with them, right? You see Fat Joe and Jay-Z. You see Jim Jones with Rock Nation. Like, I like the maturity in it. I think that one of the instances that doesn't get enough credit, the Jay-Z and Nas interview, when Nas, signed, and Sway was interviewing both of them, and nobody died, and nobody had been, right? That they acted like it didn't happen. They acted like they don't remember that after Tupac was killed, even in the area, there was like 11 murders. Like, we're not even talking about the high profile thing. People died behind that. We're not talking about just the whole situation with Wolf and BMF. Like, people died behind this. So the fact that the two biggest rappers in the game had one of the most monumental beefs ever, and nobody died, and they did business, and they both became billionaires, like, there are narratives that we need to extract to highlight those narratives. Yes, they're gonna highlight YNW Melly was indicted for murder and had a song called "Murder on My Mind," and that's where they're gonna reflect. In the same way they manipulated Dr. King's legacy to make us think a man that wanted us to get paid and get our check was just a dreamer, and to honor him we should work for free. I don't know what is, right? They're going to do the same thing with these artists and these pioneers. I remember when people first started saying, oh, back in the day that hip hop was just about a party. And I was like, you never heard the message? Scratch that. You never heard White Lines? It was about a party, but it was about a different way of partying. It also talked about the socioeconomic status and the infiltration of drugs in the community. Like, don't adopt this reductionist view of people outside of the culture and who can't understand the culture. Because those are the people who came in and thought that everything was beef and everything was a diss, when sometimes it was just healthy competition that always existed in hip hop. Like that whole smack me and I'll smack your back, right? With EPMD and Rakim. Like nobody was gonna fight, and if it did get tense, it was just some regular street stuff. It was people from the outside. I think Tupac said it on Trap. Girlies was laughing too, saying, "Damn, homie, dissing you." Like when the people on the side start to egg it on, because they not the type of people to fight. I might fight you and shake your hand, and we go right to the party together. We two gladiators, we two grown men, we two MCs. We could talk about all kind of stuff in a battle and shake hands right when the battle's over. It's these outside people. It's these people that don't understand what we do and what we made of and how we cut. Those are the ones going, oh, Jay-Z diss in parentheses, capital bold letters. And it's like, wait a minute, nobody dissed anybody. Like all I said was I'm the baddest rapper in history, LLC. You know, like he wasn't trying to make a personal situation, but I just want to say I'm the best because that's what rappers do. And people started to look at hip hop through the lens of the outsider. Like Du Bois talks about viewing ourselves as the guys of the oppressor. We really started saying every time I mention my name up in this stuff. Why can't I mention your name? You're on top of the hill. You already know what comes with that. And if you don't, then listen to Jay-Z's advice to Drake on the song they did together. This is how they're going to come at you with silly rap views, trying to distract you, right? This is what comes with being on top. So we understood it, but other people got involved, just like they got involved in terms of the commodification, you know, of the consciousness and creativity. Saying, the Jerry Hellers and all that. And Jerry Heller said readily, he called the New York hip hop the era of gold chains and big penises. He said different words. Which is odd. You know, the history of castration and all that. There's always been these sick obsessions. Not gonna go there. But the point I'm making is there was already embedded in that seed, even though it grew into something great. It was jealousy. It was insecurity. It was a desire to take control of the lucrative nature of the creativity. So it wasn't like a genuine interest in terms of how this thing got diversified. And I think that story's not told. It's always told in terms of the audience it reached. And I'm glad you mentioned Vanilla Ice going diamond and things like that, because it's not solely about how many people it reaches. It's who are these ambassadors and for what purpose is it promoted and how is it brought to the masses. This is of critical importance. That's why you have people who don't even understand, you know, the whole 5% nation influence on hip hop in terms of fashion, stance, dance, and lyricism, because that wasn't a part of what the commodification was interested in. Right? So you have people taking critical pillars of what influenced hip hop to become what it was, whether it's early gang culture in New York, whether it's the 5% nation, and they're like, we can't use that. And that's why the rapper became front and center and the only element of hip hop that we knew. The artists and the breakdancers, they don't even know what hip hop is at this point. You have people who just said that you all can't fit on this auction block. We're gonna take the guy with the mic because then we don't need to do the whole bid him in, you know, going once, going twice, because he can do it himself. He can grab the mic himself, the stage will be the auction block, and we'll just sit and stand back and sell him and then blame him for what he says, even though we won't let him say anything else.
You know, those who are tuning in, you're listening to the powerful voice of Dr. Aaron Smith, aka Dr. Jabali Ade, aka the rapping professor, just doing his professorial thing. By the way, in the next 30 seconds, Dr. Ade, what I'd like you to do is provide some contact information so folks know how to reach out to you. And then we're going to wrap up for the last 7, 8, 9 minutes with O'Henny, the man I call the Martian, the extraterrestrial who does everything inside, outside when it comes to hip hop. By the way, I'm so glad you made the point that hip hop and rap are not synonymous, that rap emceeing is simply an element of that, because we forget about the graph writing, forget about the breakdance, forget about all that other stuff. In fact, KRS said it's about 10 or 12 other items. I'm just looking at the 4 basics. KRS said it's about 12 of them. So in the next 30 seconds, Dr. Ade, tell folks how they can follow you or contact you.
The email is asmith10@temple.edu, asmith10@temple.edu. Funny story with the last 10 seconds. Back in the 80s, somebody said, what do you think is going to last longer, rap or breakdancing? And everybody agreed unanimously that breakdancing would last. And the reason why is because we all said people are going to run out of words to rhyme together. We had no idea.
Very well said. I got to tell you, when I was studying and learning hip hop, I was shocked that the MC was almost an afterthought. The MC was just the guy hyping up the party. The DJ was the front man. And pretty much the MC was the Flavor Flav type, the old dirty bastard type. And then it developed into something else. Great words, great scholar, Dr. Jabali Ade, Dr. Aaron Smith, AKA the rapping professor. Going to wrap things up with O'Henny, who, as I said, I've been knowing for a long time. And when I talk about my favorite artists of all time, I'm talking about Jay Electronica. I'm talking about Pharoah Monch. I'm talking about people like that. And on my list, this guy O'Henny is there. Like people like O'Henny is in the same breath of these superstars. The answer is, have you heard him? And if you've heard him, you know why. O'Henny, we're going to have you wrap it up in the final 7 minutes.
Well, let me just say it's always an honor and a privilege to come together with like-minded people. In this case, we happen to be talking about my favorite subject, which is hip hop. You know what I'm saying? Everybody who knows me knows I just love, and breathe this whole, thing called hip hop. I make beats, I MC. I used to break dance. I mean, whatever you can think of. Like I'm a hip hop head. I used to go to the Rotunda, and they would do graph writing, and I would hang out with the graph writers and stuff. Like, I'm really from the culture, and so I just want to say, one of the things I like to do is to focus on what is it that we actually want. And when I talk to my big brother Play, he says, what is hip? He says, being in the circles he's been in, and he's an icon at this point. The Kid and Play brand is, they're household names for the most part. And he says, the question I ask myself is, what is hip hop for? And I think about that question in regards to what I bring to the table. The past couple of days, I've been reading comments. People are telling me like, man, this brings me to tears, man. I miss this type of hip hop and I miss bars. And there have been people who've messaged me and said, I helped them get through divorces and I helped them get through, just real, rough times in their lives. And I feel as though that's what it's for. I mean, the power of words. So I want to leave with this. Music is many things, right? Music is rhythm, right? So we talk about rhythm, and rhythm can make a toddler start moving, and they don't know why they're moving. They're just moving because the rhythm is playing, right? So you have rhythm there. So rhythm has the ability to control your body. It can make you do things. You could be sitting there and hear the right beat, and your feet you just start tapping your feet involuntarily. So rhythm has the power to control your movement, your body physically. We also know that music is also words, because there are lyrics in music. We talk about specifically hip hop. Words have the ability to sway your mind. Words have the ability to make you happy, make you sad. Depending on what's being said, someone can discourage you or they could encourage you, right? So we know that words have that power. We know that it has, we also know that music is, it has hooks, the repetitious, the chorus, the repetitious thing. And when you think about repetition, what it does, you can look into a black church and see how the repetition causes people to just really catch the spirit. We call it the Holy Ghost in the black church. You know what I'm saying? And if you understand the power of repetition, James Brown understood that with funk. Hip hop has that element there. The repetition of something is how you're able to implant into somebody's mind with memory by repeating something over and over again. It sticks with them. It also music has melody, and melody helps you to remember things through sound. So, for example, we all know how we learned the ABCs. A, B, C, D.
Yes.
We learned it through melody. So music has the ability to literally call to your memory things. Nostalgia is also wrapped into music. It's many things that come with what this thing is. And I'm not doing it full justice because I have a little bit of time, but I talk about this all the time. Not to mention the sound frequencies themselves, the actual sound. There are experiments that you can look up on YouTube called cymatics, where they take the sound, they take a device that generates tones, sound, and they put a tube in water, and the water begins to vibrate in different patterns. according to whatever frequency you play. So certain frequencies create these beautiful patterns. Other frequencies make it all, like ruffled and rough.
Whoa.
And so considering that we have so much water as part of our body, we should understand that music is doing something to us. The question is, what is the music doing to you? So these are the things I like to challenge people with. What are you entertaining? What conversations are you entertaining? If the conversations are negative, you're going to be depressed. There's a lot of depression we see in the world. So again, I think that we can control and curate our playlist. We can decide what we want to listen to make our lives better. It's just like food. You talk about me looking like I'm, a lot younger because I eat very well. Like I drink alkaline water, and I study, people like Dr. Sabi and Dr. Africa. I have people who are my elders in the community who challenged me and said, "Brother, you can't be rapping this consciousness and then just treat your body any kind of way. That's important." So these are things that are a part of our overall, existence here. So I really just want to add that I think hip hop is maturing. I love to see it grow, and I just want to be a part of it as it, continues to establish itself as a more serious art form. As you know, Mike, I've been pushing for people to respect hip hop as a high art form. I have a song called Rap Opera. It's a 30-minute song, and it goes through Western classical, jazz, rock. I mean, it's multi-genre. In 30 minutes, you're hearing all of this, but it's all rap related. And so I show people of me playing instruments so that people can understand rappers can play instruments too. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want people to look at rap and not respect it. And that's been a big part of my journey. Teaching at Temple, that was a part of the journey. And there's so many other things, even how we communicate in interviews, what we bring to an interview. These are all things that will make people look at rap and say, man, that's something of value, or they'll just say, man, those guys are just rhyming words. You know what I'm saying? And so,
well, I got to tell you what they've heard from you. And when I say you, I'm talking about Ohene, that's Ohene, and Dr. Aaron Smith, aka Dr. Jabali Ade, aka the rapping professor. I've had elected officials on the show. I've had the DA on the show. I had some big movers and shakers. This is the best interview I've ever had. I mean, it's not an interview, it's a conversation. It's a party. It's a family reunion. You both don't know this, but you're going to be my guest on my WRD radio show. I'll be hosting this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 4 to 7. I'm going to reach out to you to see when we can have you back. Also, Henny, when you're talking about that whole sound thing, folks have to check out the scene in the great Netflix film, They Clone Tyrone. They get into that. Folks, we run out of time. These two gentlemen will be back. They'll be on the radio with me. Thank you both. You made my day. I'm going to end today's show like every time we're on Think Black. I'm out.